Hey guys, tonight we are drifting into a galaxy so wide and strange that even the brightest lamps of terror couldn't light all its corners. Imagine yourself standing on a metal walkway high above a starship hangar, shadows everywhere, echoing footsteps, and the distant rumble of plasma engines. You're leaning on the railing, looking down at titans resting like giant statues, and you realize, wow, this is bedtime material. And yes, you chuckle, because if you actually had to maintain one of those engines, you definitely wouldn't survive. You wouldn't even last through the instruction manual. You sure wouldn't live through it. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, while you're at it, drop a comment with your local time and where you're tuning in from. It's always fun to imagine someone in New Zealand yawning while someone in Chicago is making midnight noodles. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're walking slowly, and the corridor stretches long, humming with old machine spirits. The air tastes metallic, like when you lick a battery as a kid. Don't deny it, you tried it once. The Horus Heresy opens before you, not like a textbook, but like a dream you can't fully remember. It's the great betrayal, but tonight it feels like a lullaby with jagged edges, whispered slowly so you can drift. The Emperor of Mankind, golden and towering, is somewhere far above your head, hidden in the palace on Terra. You picture him not as a furious warlord, but as someone who's been awake for thousands of years without coffee. The common historical fact, something even newcomers know, is that his favorite son, Horus, turned against him. This is the spine of the story, the tragedy that defines 10,000 years of lies and echoes. But the odd detail, the little garnish of weirdness, is this. Horus was once called Lupercal, a name that sounds half like a wolf, half like a brand of overpriced cologne. You imagine a bottle with Lupercal for men in shiny letters, smelling faintly of ozone and rebellion. And yet that name carried weight. It tied him to the wolves of ancient Terra myths, to Romulus and Remus, to the idea of founders betrayed by their own blood. You step closer, and the shadows on the wall shift like they're listening. You remember something odd from Earth history too. In ancient Egypt, people used fermented fish guts as sunscreen. Suddenly you wonder if Astartes had vacations, would they smear themselves in Mechanicus-approved machine oil and call it SPF 100? Probably not. Horus, though, wasn't just a traitor on a whim. He was wounded, poisoned by chaos whispers, pulled down like a moth into a flame. And here comes the scholarly debate. Historians in the Imperium still argue whether Horus ever truly believed in the gods of chaos, or if he only pretended, tricked by his own pride. Was it devotion, or just the galaxy's most disastrous midlife crisis? You're still moving down that hallway, your boots soft on the metal floor. A data screen flickers. You think about how every betrayal in history feels personal, even when its empire's collapsing. Caesar stabbed by friends, Byzantines selling out Constantinople, your cousins spoiling the end of a movie in the group chat. Betrayal always stings. You pause and chuckle quietly. Imagine the emperor setting up family dinner night, all his sons around the table, and one of them suddenly says, "By the way, Dad, I've joined a dark pantheon, past the salt." You know you shouldn't laugh at galactic civil war, but come on, that's the kind of sitcom episode that writes itself. Joke 1 delivered. The story stretches, smooth and sleepy, as you follow Horus on campaign after campaign. At first, he is the War Master, the beloved commander. The legions adore him, mortals chant his name, and even other Primarchs look to him like the best older brother. You can almost hear the boots of tens of thousands of Space Marines marching in perfect rhythm, a sound so steady it becomes like ocean waves in your ears. You close your eyes for a second, it's strangely calming, and then, in the background, you hear whispers. Chaos doesn't shout, It hums like static. It tickles the edges of thought, like when you're trying to remember the name of that actor from that one movie. You know the one. It drives you a little mad until you accept it. That's how Horus heard them, soft and subtle, like a lullaby with teeth. The weird side fact, people sometimes forget that the wound that corrupted him came from a simple blade, wielded by a minor alien species, the Anathema. A knife small enough to be dismissed, yet sharp enough to slice destiny in half. You imagine a whole galactic war triggered by the equivalent of stepping on a Lego brick. Funny how history balances on absurd details your steps echo. You feel like you're on a spaceship that has forgotten whether it's moving or not. The hum never ends. You lean on the wall and the metal is cool beneath your palm. You grin faintly. If this were an IKEA spaceship, there'd definitely be missing screws. That's joke number 2. The Astartes legions fracture slowly, like ice breaking underfoot. Horus calls his brothers, whispers poison, and the great crusade turns sour. Whole planets burn, but tonight you imagine them as candles, flickering out one by one. The galaxy is wide and the darkness spreads gently, almost lazily, like a blanket drawn over tired eyes. And still, you think of the Emperor. Was he blind? Did he see it coming? Another debate that rattles across scholar halls. Some say he knew and allowed it. Others argue he was too focused on his secret projects under the palace. Scholars still shrug and sip recaf, muttering that maybe omniscience is overrated. You yawn softly, imagining the Imperial Palace, all glittering towers and endless golden halls. They say it took 1 million workers just to polish the stairs. You picture some poor janitor with a mop that never, ever runs out of marble to scrub. That's joke number 3. The vision drifts again. You're in Horus's flagship, the Vengeful Spirit. The name itself feels heavy, like it wants to anchor your eyelids. You wander past doors taller than skyscrapers, murals of battles that seem to move when you look at them too long. The crew walk past in silence, every one of them caught between loyalty and fear. You feel it too, that heavy pull of inevitability, and yet there's something soothing here. The betrayal is ancient, written 10,000 years ago, and no matter how much you replay it, you cannot change the ending. That's the comfort. The war is terrible, yes, but it's finished. You're just gliding along the edges, a spectator on the soft waves of memory. Your voice drops lower now, whispering almost. Horus stands, once noble, now trembling with power, not his own. His eyes glimmer like stars about to collapse. You lean closer, not afraid, just curious. Because in the stillness of night, even the greatest tragedies become like bedtime stories. The kind that cradle you, strange and soft, until sleep takes you. You're still moving through the corridors of the Vengeful Spirit, and the air feels heavier now. Every step echoes like a heartbeat, steady and slow, as if the ship itself is waiting. You pass a viewport and see the stars hanging outside like tiny lanterns scattered far apart. You wonder if they twinkle in the same way for mortals on peaceful worlds, or if, in this grim dark galaxy, even starlight has a grimace. Somewhere in the distance, Horus is speaking to his sons, his voice rich and magnetic, convincing them of truths bent like warped metal. You lean against the glass, and you know the common historical fact. The War Master's betrayal didn't start with a shout, it started with whispers. He gathered legions to his cause, the sons of Horus, the World Eaters, the Emperor's children, the Death Guard, brothers twisted into betrayers. 4 pillars of rebellion, each bound to a god of chaos. Though at the time, they probably just thought they were getting a membership card with free cosmic benefits. The odd detail tonight is this. The World Eaters, famous for blood-soaked rage, were once a legion obsessed with discipline. Imagine that, an army known for table manners and strict order, who one day collectively decided, let's scream forever instead. It's the equivalent of a professional orchestra suddenly smashing their violins to start a heavy metal band. You can't help but smile at the absurdity, and here comes your open debate. Scholars and lawkeepers still argue whether Angron, their Primarch, was ever truly free of his butcher's nails, those horrifying implants hammered into his brain that forced constant violence. Was he born a victim who never had a choice? Or did he embrace the nails, find in them a twisted sense of purpose? You imagine professors in dusty robes waving their hands, one side insisting Angron was enslaved by fate, the other saying he just liked smashing too much. Your footsteps carry you deeper, and you hear low chanting in the ship's chapel. The words are not in any language you know, but the rhythm is soothing, like monks humming in the background of a spa playlist. You picture a chaos meditation app where the daily mantra is just unsettling static. Not exactly calming, but hey, whatever helps people sleep. That's joke number one. The truth of Horus's rebellion is that it fractured not only armies, but families. Each Primarch had to decide, follow the Emperor or follow Horus. Imagine a family group chat exploding with betrayal messages, emojis flying everywhere, half the kids storming off to join chaos while the others mute the thread. The galaxy turned into one massive sibling rivalry with apocalypse-level stakes. You drift into a chamber filled with hololithic maps. Blue lights shimmer, showing planets already under Horus's sway. The Siege of Terra begins to whisper in your ear, and you recall that common fact. It was the first open massacre, the moment the masks came off. Loyalist legions were tricked, ambushed by their supposed brothers, and slaughtered on blackened fields. Yet tonight, you don't hear the screams, you hear the silence afterward, when ash floats like snow and the stars watch in pity. The strange side fact is that Istvan was once a prosperous mining world, its soil rich in rare ores. Miners spent generations digging deep, unaware their planet would one day be remembered not for what it gave life to, but for the death it hosted. It's like naming a beautiful beach after a sewage plant. Destiny has a twisted sense of humor. You think of the survivors, shattered, crawling, dragging themselves back to warn the Imperium. Some scholars still argue over how many truly escaped, whether their tales were exaggerated or diminished. Were the numbers higher, the betrayal deeper? Or was it smaller, but amplified by the horror of brothers killing brothers? Historians scribble endlessly, never reaching consensus, because mystery itself is part of the myth. You pause, a soft smile tugging at your lips. Picture those scholars arguing on a reality show. The Great Debate, Istvan edition, complete with dramatic music and audience votes. That's joke number 2. Your voice lowers, soothing, as the story slows into rhythm. The Emperor, still on Terra, receives news of his beloved Horus's treachery. You imagine his golden hand gripping the throne arm, a tiny crack forming under divine pressure. And yet, he does not storm into battle immediately. He plans, waits, calculates. Some say this patience cost him dearly. Others whisper that rushing would have destroyed Terra before its time. Another debate that floats unresolved like dust motes in a sunbeam. The ship hums around you. You lean back against the cold steel and close your eyes for a moment, feeling the steady vibration. The galaxy burns, but your breathing stays calm. The irony is sweet, listening to the end of worlds while drifting closer to sleep. A memory surfaces, a real-world one. Ancient Romans sometimes used powdered mouse brains as toothpaste. Imagine trying to brush your teeth with that. Suddenly, the grim darkness of the far future doesn't seem so strange. Maybe humanity has always had a flair for the bizarre. The Vengeful Spirit's corridors, and you find yourself in a gallery of statues, Primarchs carved in marble, all stern faces and heroic poses. One statue, though, is missing a head. You chuckle. If this were a modern art gallery, someone would call it the fragmentation of authority. Joke number 3, soft and sleepy. You trail your fingers along the marble, smooth under your hand. Each Primarch once shone like a beacon, but here, in this quiet retelling, they are more like tired actors in a play that never ends. Horus, Fulgrim, Mortarion, Angron, they step into their roles as villains, while their loyal brothers shoulder the burden of resistance. The galaxy splits neatly into two halves, though the cracks are jagged and cruel. And still, Horus's charisma pulses through every whisper. He is not just a warrior, he is a storyteller, convincing others that the Emperor lied, that the Imperium was built on broken promises. 10,000 years of lies, he claimed, and his voice was warm enough to make cold truths sound inviting. You can almost hear him now, soft at your ear, weaving tales you know are poison, yet they sound so gentle you almost want to believe. Your eyelids are heavy, but you drift onward, curious. The betrayal grows, the war expands, and the long road to terror begins. And though the story is sharp, filled with fire and ruin, tonight it is wrapped in velvet tones, stretched slowly across your imagination. You follow the thread, soft and steady, deeper into the heresy, deeper into the dream. You're still adrift inside the Vengeful Spirit, though now the corridors give way to wide chambers filled with banners. They hang heavy in the stale air, green, red, and gold, each stitched with emblems of legions that once swore loyalty to the Emperor. Now they ripple faintly as if breathing. You stop to watch them sway, and you can't help but think of laundry on a clothesline. Even in the grim darkness of the far future, banners are basically just space laundry with more skulls. The story draws you gently forward. You know the common historical fact, the Istvan betrayal wasn't the end. It was the beginning of open civil war. The legions that followed Horus struck outward, consuming world after world, spreading treachery like an infection through the Imperium. You can picture it. One planet falls, then another, like dominoes pushed over in slow motion across a galaxy-spanning table. The odd little detail that always lingers. Some legions change their colors after turning traitor. Horus's Sons of Horus, for example, painted their armor sea green, abandoning the lunar white of their early days. Imagine being a painter on that scale, millions of suits of power armor suddenly needing a new coat. Somewhere, in the background of galactic history, there was probably a stressed-out quartermaster muttering, "We're out of sea green again, sir." And now the debate. Scholars argue whether these color changes were symbolic devotion to chaos, or if they were just practical attempts to distinguish allies from enemies in the fog of war. Was it ideology, or was it battlefield fashion? Historians still squabble, and you can almost imagine a symposium titled 50 Shades of Traitor Armor. That's joke number one. You step further, the ships hum, wrapping you like a blanket. You enter a hall of murals depicting the Siege of Prospero. The flames lick up painted walls, sorcery frozen mid-cast. The Thousand Suns, under Magnus the Red, caught between loyalty and guilt. The common thread of history tells you this. Magnus tried to warn the Emperor about Horus's corruption, but in doing so, he shattered the Emperor's wards and damaged Terra's defenses. A loyal act, delivered in the wrong way that looked like treachery. The odd fact tied to Prospero, the burning of its grand libraries. They say its archives contained knowledge stretching back to old Earth. Some even whispered of recipes and medical notes long forgotten. You imagine an archivist trying to save a cookbook, shouting, "Wait, this is the only surviving recipe for spiced grox stew," before being crushed under falling shelves. A tragic comedy buried under ash, and again, scholars disagree. Was the destruction of Prospero inevitable, fated by Magnus's hubris? Or was it engineered by Horus's manipulations, twisting misunderstandings into cosmic-scale betrayals? Debate flows like endless ink, unresolved, perhaps never resolvable. You lean back, smiling faintly at the idea of an eternal academic conference, where the coffee is always lukewarm. Joke number two. Your voice drops softer as you move into a quieter gallery. This one depicts the Death Guard, Mortarion's legion trudging through swamps and plague fields. The paintings shimmer green under dim light. Here lies another thread, the loyal once-turned traitor. Mortarion, always obsessed with survival against poisons and toxins, would become the chosen of Nurgle, the god of decay. The irony is sharp. He hated sorcery, yet bound himself to the most sorcerous of plagues. And the odd detail, before his fall, Mortarion made his legion march in environments saturated with toxins just to harden them. Entire regiments of humans unable to keep up died in those drills. It's as if your gym trainer decided the warm-up was a 20-mile jog in a volcano. You sigh, if that doesn't make you sleepy, nothing will. Joke number 3, the debate. Whether Mortarion truly believed he was saving his sons from worse fates by embracing Nurgle, or if he simply gave in, despair, heavy as rust. Some texts say he thought he was protecting them from annihilation. Others say it was weakness masquerading as duty. You glance at the murals, the faces of plague-ridden Marines frozen in paint, and wonder if the truth even matters now. You drift onward, your steps cushioned by the hum of the ship. The halls open into a vast observatory dome. Stars spill in through fractured glass, and you see them more clearly than before, bright, distant, eternal. The war rages across them, but here, in this stillness, they just look like glitter, scattered across black velvet. You lean on the railing, the cold seeping into your arms, and the silence is so deep it could almost rock you to sleep. You let your mind wander. Remember that strange ancient practice when medieval Europeans believed carrying a potato in your pocket cured illness? You imagine a Death Guard Marine solemnly strapping a potato to his armor, muttering, "For resilience." History is always a little ridiculous when you zoom in far enough. And the story flows back, soft and steady. Horus has gathered his allies. Fulgrim, the Primarch of the Emperor's children, has fallen to Slaanesh, god of excess. His legion, once perfect, disciplined, obsessed with art and beauty, now consumed by indulgence and corruption. The contrast is chilling, but told in this gentle tone, it feels like a cautionary bedtime fable. You can almost picture Fulgrim flipping his hair dramatically, only for his shampoo to whisper unsettling temptations. Again, the scholars debate. Did Fulgrim choose freely, or was he tricked by the possession of a demon blade? Was his corruption an accident of vanity, or the inevitable slide of someone who demanded perfection? The argument rolls on, soft as distant thunder, unresolved but oddly comforting in its endlessness. Your eyelids are heavy now, the weight of history settling like warm blankets. The betrayals, the lies, the colors of armor shifting, the libraries burning, they all fold together into a quiet rhythm, a lullaby of galactic tragedy. The hum of the ship, the glow of the stars, and the slow cadence of betrayal make the heresy feel less like a wound and more like a dream you drift through. Strange and oddly soothing. You breathe slowly, your mind adrift with the image of Horus's banners, green and gold swaying in the still air. And in that moment you realize the heresy is both epic and absurd, tragic and faintly comic, history and bedtime story all at once. The contradictions are what cradle you, and so you take another slow step into the darkness of the tale, letting it lead you gently onward. You're still inside the observatory dome of the Vengeful Spirit. Stars gleam above you, and the blackness feels endless, as if the galaxy itself were a velvet blanket being slowly tucked around your shoulders. You take another step, and the sound of your boots rings like a bell, soft, steady, hypnotic. The banners of Horus's traitor legions ripple faintly in your memory, but now your gaze shifts outward, toward the stars of Ultramar. You know the common historical fact. The Ultramarines, under Robert Guilliman, were among the most loyal of all legions, but Horus deliberately kept them far from Terra during the early stages of the heresy. Guilliman's armies, vast and disciplined, were stranded in the galactic east while Terra trembled. It was a betrayal not only by war, but by distance. An emperor's strongest shield held back by cunning strategy. And here is the odd little detail. Guilliman was a meticulous administrator, a bureaucrat in power armor. His codices, his rules, his endless paperwork, these were his weapons as much as his sword. Imagine a Primarch who could conquer galaxies and still complain about people not filling out the correct forms. You picture him sighing, "No, Horus, you didn't use the right requisition document for your rebellion." The scholarly debate that lingers is whether Horus intentionally pulled Guilliman away to cripple Terra's defenses, or if it was simply the chaos of war scattering legions unpredictably. Did the War Master plan every step like a grand chess master, or was it messy coincidence painted as strategy later on? Historians argue endlessly, some insisting Horus was brilliant, others saying he was simply lucky. The truth drifts somewhere in the middle, like a coin spinning forever in slow motion. You move from the observatory into a wide hall lined with portraits, Primarchs painted larger than life, each one frozen at the height of their pride. You pause before Leman Russ, the Wolf King, and the painted eyes glint faintly in the low light. You remember that the wolves were the ones unleashed on Prospero, tasked with bringing Magnus to heel. The common thread of history says this was no accident. The Emperor ordered Magnus to be punished, but Horus whispered poison into Russ's ear, turning a censure into an annihilation. The odd side note? Wolves of Fenris were said to be so large they could bite through armored plating. Imagine taking one of those on a walk around the neighborhood. You'd need a leash made of starship chains and a bag the size of a dump truck. It's a ridiculous picture, but it lingers long enough to make you smile. Joke number one. Scholars still argue about this event. Did the Emperor truly want Prospero destroyed, or did Horus manipulate Russ into going further than intended? Was Magnus betrayed twice, first by his own mistake, then by the Emperor's miscommunication? The debate never ends, and in the quiet of this telling, the uncertainty is almost comforting. No answers, only questions, floating like dust in sunbeams. Your voice lowers, soft as velvet, as you continue down the hall. You come across a cracked marble floor, vines of corrosion creeping through the seams. Here lies the shadow of Mortarion again, the death guard slowly descending into plague. The common fact you recall is the Siege of Barbarus, Mortarion's childhood, spent fighting in toxic air against necromantic warlords. His lungs were always scarred, his body always poisoned. And so when Nurgle came, promising an end to the suffering, Mortarion yielded. The odd detail? Some records suggest Mortarion was terrified of heights, despite being able to fly with his massive wings later in life. Imagine a winged demon Primarch muttering, "I'll fight gods. But don't ask me to climb a ladder." Joke number two, whispered gently. And the debate here. Did Nurgle truly save Mortarion from death when his legion's ships were drowning in warp plague? Or did Nurgle simply twist the illusion of survival into eternal decay? Scholars argue, voices hushed, because answering means deciding whether salvation can exist in corruption. You pause, smile faintly, and remember another odd fact from Earth history. In medieval Europe, people believed that putting onions in their socks cured fevers. You chuckle quietly. Imagine the Death Guard adopting that as part of their uniform. Rows of plague marines solemnly stuffing onions into greaves, declaring themselves immune. Joke number three. The hum of the Vengeful Spirit wraps tighter now, and you follow it into a chamber of relics. Weapons and banners rest under faint glow lamps, dust settling over them. You reach out, your fingers brushing air just above the glass, and you feel the weight of all those who wielded them. Here lies Fulgrim's blade, twisted with demonic whispers. Here, Angron's chain axes still humming faintly as if eager to be swung. The relics are silent, yet they carry echoes louder than thunder. You let yourself drift, the rhythm of history unfolding in your ears. The heresy spreads further. Ultramar weakened, Prospero burned, Death Guard corrupted, Emperor's children lost to excess. Each step in the war feels heavy, yet told in this soft cadence, it becomes almost soothing, a steady drumbeat for sleep. Your thoughts wander, drifting to the loyalists still holding their ground. Rogel Dawn, the Praetorian of Terra, reinforcing the palace, building walls higher and higher. The common fact is that Dawn was the builder, the stoic, the one who prepared Terra itself for siege. He turned the cradle of humanity into a fortress, the odd detail. Dawn was rumored to have zero sense of humor. His sons, the Imperial Fists, were legendarily dour. You imagine them gathered at a comedy night, arms crossed, not a single chuckle in the hall. Even the Emperor would have sighed. Joke number 4, gentle, sleepy, just enough to curve your lips. And scholars debate whether Dawn's rigidity was his greatest strength or his fatal flaw. Did his refusal to bend save Terra, or did it break him in ways unseen? The question lingers, unsolved, like a chord left hanging in the air. You exhale slowly. The ship hums on, the relics gleam faintly, the stars outside remain unmoved. And so you drift deeper into the tale, lulled by betrayal, comforted by debate, and amused by the odd little details that stitch history together like a quilt of contradictions. The hum of the Vengeful Spirit is steady now, like a heartbeat hidden deep in metal ribs. You step softly, the deck beneath your boots cool and faintly trembling. The stars outside the windows have thinned, replaced by nebula clouds glowing like ink spilled into water. The colors pulse slowly, violet, crimson, emerald, shapes shifting in silence, as if the warp itself is pressing its face against the glass. Your story drifts toward the Ultramarine territories again, the shining jewel of Macraga and the scattered 500 worlds of Ultramar. The common historical fact you remember is the Shadow Crusade. While Horus struck openly in the west, the traitor legions of Word-bearers and World-eaters tore through Guilliman's empire, burning holy cities and slaughtering civilians. It wasn't just war, it was a psychological assault, a way to bleed loyalty dry. You imagine it now as a chessboard set on fire, pieces melting into ash. The odd little detail that surfaces is this. The Word-bearers, led by Lorgar, loved writing sermons, whole tomes of scripture, galaxy-sized fan fiction for their new dark gods. You picture a Primarch hunched over a desk, scribbling at midnight, muttering, "This chapter really needs more fire." Imagine a legion of battle-hardened warriors forced to proofread sermons instead of polishing bolters. That's joke number 1, and here lies the scholarly debate. Some argue that the Shadow Crusade was Horus's masterpiece by keeping Guilliman busy defending his worlds. He prevented him from marching to Terra. Others say it was Lorgar's obsession, dragging Angron along into a bloody distraction that ultimately wasted strength. Was it strategy or was it vanity cloaked in fire? Historians still mutter, pages filled with footnotes, and none of them agree. Your steps carry you through a chamber where the ship's walls flicker with hololithic runes. For a moment they glow like constellations, and you feel as though you're standing under an artificial sky. The constellations shift and reshape, telling old stories. Horus at the height of glory, then Horus crowned with shadow. The stars blink slowly, like drowsy eyes watching you from centuries away. You move closer, and the scene changes again. Calth. The common thread is clear. The Word-bearers unleash demons into the Ultramar system, turning the battle into a war not just of men, but of unreality itself. Whole cities burned under skies that bled red. Yet you don't hear the screams tonight. You hear the silence afterward, rubble cooling, prayers lingering like incense in air, too heavy to breathe. The odd fact? Calth's underground caverns became the true battlefield. Miles of tunnels, catacombs, and reactor shafts became homes for survivors. Imagine trying to wage war in a maze the size of continents, where every hallway echoes like a whisper. Somewhere down there, a soldier probably left graffiti that no one's seen in 10,000 years. Maybe it said, "Lorgar stinks." You smile at the thought. That's joke number 2. And the debate here, did Guilliman manage to save Calth by sheer brilliance? Or did the word-bearers pull back intentionally, knowing they'd already poisoned the system forever with warped hate? Some historians say Guilliman's stand was legendary. Others shrug and argue that Lorgar had already gotten what he wanted. The truth hangs suspended like dust motes in a beam of light, unresolved but strangely peaceful. The hum grows softer as you drift further. You pass through a mess hall abandoned, but dishes still rest on long tables. You brush your hand along one tray and see crumbs of rations frozen in time. You can't help but imagine a space marine complaining about portion sizes. "Brother, this is not enough carbs for conquering a planet." Joke number 3. You breathe slowly, steady, as the tale widens. Horus now has nearly half the galaxy on his side. The loyalists are stretched thin, exhausted, their lines breaking. But here, in your slow telling, it feels less like a desperate war and more like a tide rolling out. You hear it in waves and whispers, in echoes. Your mind shifts toward Conrad Kurz, the Night Haunter, Primarch of the Night Lords. His legions spread terror, not just by war, but by spectacle. Skinned corpses, cities hung with shadows. Yet the fact that lingers is quieter. Kurz himself was haunted by visions of his own death. He foresaw his doom, accepted it, and lived his life like a candle already half-burned. The tragedy is sharp, but tonight it feels like a melancholy song hummed too softly to fully grasp. And the odd detail. Kurz loved using bats as symbols, yet his world of Nostromo was so polluted the bats had mostly died off. Imagine a warlord branding his legion with an animal no one had actually seen for decades. It's like naming your soccer team the Dinosaurs. Absurd, yet somehow fitting. The scholars debate endlessly. Was Kurz a prophet who truly saw the future, or a madman projecting his nightmares onto reality? Was he doomed by fate or by self-fulfilling prophecy? Even now, no answer. Only the uneasy comfort of wondering. You drift onward, the hum still steady, your eyes half-lidded as the ship carries you. You pass a chapel filled with broken icons. Skulls carved into altars stare back at you, their sockets empty but strangely peaceful. Candles flicker, their wax hardened into frozen drips like stalactites. The silence presses down gently, urging your breathing slower, slower still. And again your mind wanders. Did you know in the 18th century, some Europeans believed that burying a live horse beneath a building gave it strength against evil spirits? Imagine the Adeptus Mechanicus adopting that tradition, trying to shove a horse into the foundations of a titan. You snort softly. Joke number 4, tucked in gently. The heresy deepens, the war grows wider, yet in your telling it is never rushed. Each battle, each betrayal, each laughably strange detail folds together like patchwork until the galaxy feels less like a nightmare and more like a strange lullaby. The Vengeful Spirit hums, the stars drift slowly past the windows, and you follow the path deeper into shadow, deeper into the long betrayal, and yet, through all of it, you remain calm, wrapped in the story as though it were a blanket spun from starlight and sorrow. The corridors of the Vengeful Spirit shift again. The walls are closer here, carved with runes that shimmer faintly, as though listening. You slow your steps and the floor hums with a deeper vibration, like the purr of some enormous animal half asleep. The stars beyond the glass are distant now, hidden behind thick storm clouds of the warp. Their colors twist and smear, as if someone painted space with wet ink and then dragged a finger across the canvas. You let the story pull you forward. The common historical fact here: the traitor legions did not only strike with swords and bolters, they split the Imperium by tearing its fleets, its politics, and its trust apart. At the heart of this spiral was Lorgar, Primarch of the Word-Bearers, who had once been the most devout worshipper of the Emperor. Forbidden from worshipping him as a god, he turned his devotion elsewhere to chaos. And so the seeds of the heresy were planted long before Horus raised his banner. The odd detail that always makes you pause before his fall. Lorgar had an enormous cathedral constructed on a conquered world to honor the Emperor. It was bigger than most cities. The Emperor, unimpressed, ordered it destroyed. You imagine Lorgar sulking like a disappointed child. "But Dad, it took me centuries." And the Emperor sighing, "I said no fan clubs." Joke number 1, gentle and soft. The debate among scholars is whether the Emperor was right to crush Lorgar's faith so harshly. Some say devotion could have been harnessed, guided, turned into something unifying. Others argue it was dangerous from the start, destined to curdle into fanaticism. The question lingers like incense smoke. Did suppression create rebellion, or did rebellion create suppression? Your steps echo into a chamber lit with crimson glow. Here, murals depict Angron and his World Eaters at the height of their fury. The fact lingers: they were among the most feared on the battlefield, their butcher's nails driving them into uncontrollable rage. Yet Angron himself had been torn from a slave rebellion on his home world, denied the chance to die with his comrades. The Emperor had plucked him away, saving his body but breaking his spirit. That wound never healed. And the odd, almost absurd side note, it's said Angron despised strategy meetings so much that he often just left them mid-discussion. Picture a war council full of generals debating logistics while Angron mutters, "This is boring," and storms off to hit something with an axe. Joke number 2. Scholars still wrestle with this question. Did Angron ever have the capacity to be anything else, or was he doomed the moment the nails were hammered into his brain? Could the Emperor have saved him with compassion, or was Angron always a tragedy walking? The answers vanish into the hum, unresolved, leaving you with the quiet sadness of inevitability. The ship hums lower, deeper, as if carrying you into its lungs. You pass a bay of shattered armor, power plates stacked in silence, some painted in sea green, others in the crimson of betrayal. Your fingertips brush the edge of a cracked helmet, and you imagine the Marine who once wore it, loyal or traitor, their name long lost to ash. The metal is cool, faintly vibrating under your hand like a tuning fork ringing in eternity. Your voice softens as you drift into the next shadow. The heresy pulls toward terror, but first, there are more betrayals to unfold. Perturabo, Primarch of the Iron Warriors, master of sieges, turned his genius against the very Imperium he once built for. The historical fact is clear. It was Perturabo who forged the traps and fortresses that made Horus's war machines unstoppable. His bitterness at being underappreciated festered into rebellion. The odd little detail? Perturabo was an obsessive tinkerer. He built miniature fortresses for fun, entire landscapes in miniature, filling rooms with model castles. Imagine a galactic warlord crouched over a table, muttering, "No one touch my diorama." Joke number 3, whispered with a smile. And the debate? Whether the Emperor neglected Perturabo unfairly, or whether Perturabo simply demanded too much recognition. Was he a genius never rewarded, or a jealous sibling blinded by pride? Scholars argue, voices low and dusty. and in the quiet their debates sound almost like bedtime murmurs. You take another step, and the warp storm outside flashes. Purple light spills across the corridor, painting the floor in twisting shapes. You remember another odd fact from Earth's history, that medieval people sometimes believed carrying toad bones could make you invisible. Imagine a word-bearer slipping bones into his armor, whispering, "No one can see me." The daemon beside him rolling its eyes. You chuckle faintly, your breathing slows with the hum. The legions are divided, the Primarchs fractured, the Imperium splintered. Each betrayal feels sharp when shouted, but told in this soft voice, it smooths into rhythm, like waves on a dark shore. You follow it step after step into the ship's endless night. The Vengeful Spirit breathes around you like some vast animal. Pipes whisper steam, bulkheads groan faintly, and somewhere deep in the hull, something knocks once, twice, as though reminding you that metal has memory. You step carefully, and the corridor ahead widens into a grand chamber filled with maps, hollow stars flickering in endless constellations, each one tagged with names of battles. You pause, and the galaxy hangs above you like a chandelier made of fireflies. The common historical fact draws your eye toward the eastern stars. The Dark Angels, led by Lion L. Johnson. Once loyal, they were caught in their own civil war on their homeworld of Caliban. While the Horus Heresy raged across the galaxy, the First Legion was too busy fighting itself. Some remained true to the Emperor. Others fell into rebellion under Luther, Johnson's closest companion. So while terror trembled, the Dark Angels were divided, their strength wasted in fratricide. And the odd little detail? Lion L. Johnson was said to sleep with his sword beside him, even during rare moments of rest. Picture a Primarch turning in his sleep and bonking his own head on the pommel. Even heroes must have had awkward mornings. "That's joke number 1, whispered softly. The scholars still argue whether the Lion's absence from Terra was deliberate exile by Horus's plotting, or whether it was simply misfortune that Caliban's rebellion erupted at the worst possible moment. Some say the Lion's obsession with secrecy doomed him to isolation. Others suggest Horus subtly fanned the flames, laughing in the shadows. Debate curls like smoke, never fully settling. You drift past the map chamber deeper into the ship. Another corridor opens into a gallery of shattered banners, each one scorched and torn. Among them, you spot the black sun of the Sons of Horus, the twisted eagle of the traitors, the jagged sigils of the word-bearers. They hang limp, but in your imagination they still flap wildly, as if caught in storms of betrayal. The hum grows deeper, pulling you toward the Siege of Terra. You know the fact. Horus finally turned his fleet toward the throne world, surrounding Terra with the might of corrupted legions, traitor Titan legions and warp-twisted warships. It was the largest concentration of violence in human history, a storm against the heart of mankind. The odd detail? Some accounts say the orbital defenses of Terra included civilian satellites, old comms stations hastily armed and shoved into battle. Imagine your local weather satellite suddenly fitted with cannons and told to fend off chaos. It's the equivalent of your Wi-Fi router standing up to a tank. You grin faintly. That's joke number 2. And scholars debate endlessly whether Horus should have struck Terra sooner. Some argue he hesitated, giving loyalists precious time to fortify. Others believe his delays allowed him to gather overwhelming force, turning the siege into inevitability. Was it caution, arrogance, or cold strategy? Historians argue as though the outcome might still be changed, though it never can. You slow your breathing. The corridor narrows again, walls dripping faint condensation. Lights flicker overhead, and the sound reminds you of rain on tin roofs, steady and soothing. The heresy rages, but you drift through it like a dream. Your path now brushes past whispers of Alfarius and Omegon, the twin Primarchs of the Alpha Legion. The fact stands, no one truly knew which side they were on. Sometimes they aided loyalists, sometimes traitors, always cloaked in mystery. Even now, 10,000 years later, scholars shrug and say, probably both. The odd side note, Alfarius supposedly insisted every soldier in his legion refer to themselves as Alfarius. Imagine a battle where everyone shouts, "I am Alfarius," at once. It's less a war cry, more a very confusing roll call. That's joke number 3. And of course, the eternal debate. Did Alfarius truly side with Horus, or was he playing a deeper game to protect humanity by losing in just the right way? Was his betrayal genuine, or the galaxy's most complicated 4D chess move? No one agrees, and the uncertainty is strangely comforting. It means the story never ends. You move further. The warp storms outside throb against the glass, but the hum of the ship stays constant. You enter a library chamber, shelves filled with data scrolls, cracked cogitators blinking faintly. Dust drifts in weightless motes. You brush your hand across one console, and a flicker of ancient records glows. Lists of fallen worlds, names of heroes and traitors. The letters fade before you can read them fully, like dreams dissolving upon waking, and you remember another odd real-world detail. In ancient China, some physicians prescribed ground-up jade as medicine, believing it brought immortality. You picture a Primarch staring at a glittering gem and thinking, yes, this will definitely fix my existential problems. History always carries its quiet absurdities. Your breathing slows. The weight of the heresy presses heavier now, but your telling keeps it soft, like heavy blankets instead of chains. You're no longer walking fast. You're drifting like a passenger on a tide that always carries you closer to Terra. The stars are gone now, replaced by the swirling maelstrom of the warp. The vengeful spirit groans as though straining against unseen currents. But you are calm, surrounded by whispers, soothed by the rhythm of betrayal turned into lullaby. The hum of the vengeful spirit deepens until it feels like thunder buried under your ribs. You step forward, and the corridor widens into a massive viewing deck. Beyond the armored glass, Terra itself hangs in the void. Blue oceans, white clouds, the faint glitter of cities sprawled across continents. You draw in a breath. For all the galaxy's ruin, Terra still looks fragile, like a pearl cupped in endless black. The common historical fact is this: Horus brought the galaxy's fury to this place. The Siege of Terra was the culmination of betrayal, a war not just of armies, but of ideology. The War Master surrounded the planet with traitor fleets, chaos titans, and corrupted legions. Loyalist forces, led by Rogel Dawn, prepared the Imperial Palace for the greatest siege in human history. And the odd little detail? Some archives suggest that during the initial bombardment, civilian voxcasters kept broadcasting soap operas as if nothing was happening. Imagine sitting in a bunker, the walls shaking, while the radio announces, "Tune in tomorrow for the dramatic conclusion of Love Among the Hive Gangers." Joke number 1. The scholarly debate here is whether Horus truly intended to destroy Terra completely, or whether he wanted the Emperor alive to witness the fall. Some argue he meant to drag the Emperor to his knees. Others say he sought to erase humanity's heart in one terrible strike. No consensus ever comes, just whispers, speculation, endless arguments across millennia. You press closer to the window. The stars are gone now. Only fire streaks through the void. Drop pods rain like meteors, each one carrying traitor marines into the heart of Terra. You picture them streaking through the atmosphere, glowing orange, like shooting stars children once wished upon. Only now the wishes come with bolters. You move through the chamber and into a hallway hung with tattered banners. They bear the sigils of the Imperial Fists, the Blood Angels, the White Scars. those few legions who made it back in time to defend Terra. The fact is simple: these loyalists fought desperately, holding walls that stretched for miles, manning guns that never cooled, shoring up breaches as fast as they were torn open. The odd fact? Terra's palace had gardens even in its deepest bunkers. Ancient parks preserved for centuries, green grass and tiny ponds hidden under mountains of stone. Some soldiers fought surrounded by flowers, a surreal contrast to the thunder of war outside. You imagine a guardsman crouched behind a rosebush, muttering, "This is the weirdest battlefield I've ever seen." Joke number 2. The scholars debate whether Dawn should have abandoned the outer walls sooner, pulling defenders inward to preserve strength. Some argue his stubbornness cost millions of lives. Others say his refusal to retreat gave humanity precious hours to prepare. Strategy or pride? It remains unresolved, a crack in history that no one can seal. Your steps echo deeper now, down spiral staircases lined with iron lamps. Each flame wavers as though sensing the story thickening. You feel it? The war is no longer distant. It's at the gate. Your voice softens as you remember Sanguinius, angel of the blood angels, descending upon the battlefield with wings outstretched. The common history says he fought tirelessly, his legion shattered but unbroken, his presence a beacon in darkness. Wherever he flew, defenders rallied. Wherever he struck, traitors faltered. And the odd, almost tender detail: Sanguinius was said to calm children merely by his presence. During the siege, some civilians who glimpsed him swore their fear evaporated instantly, as though his wings themselves carried serenity. You imagine an angel walking calmly through a bomb shelter, handing out snacks, whispering, "It'll be all right." Joke number 3, whispered gently. Scholars, however, debate endlessly. Did Sanguinius foresee his own death at Horus's hands during the siege? Some say yes, that every blow he struck carried the weight of inevitability. Others argue he believed he could still change the ending. Prophecy or hope both shimmer, neither fully certain. You move through another door into a hall filled with statues, but these are broken, half-shattered, faceless. You pause, touching one cracked marble hand. The stone is cold, brittle, but in your mind you hear drums, the roar of millions chanting in unison. The walls themselves seem to vibrate with echoes of that final battle. You remember another odd note from old Earth. In ancient Rome, soldiers sometimes carried tiny carvings of lucky phalluses as charms against evil. Imagine a space marine slipping a charm like that onto his armor before charging into chaos. History always mixes the sublime with the ridiculous. Your breathing slows again. The Siege of Terra presses heavy in your chest, but in this telling, it is softened. Less screams, more echoes, less fury, more distant thunder. The walls of the palace hold, then crack, then hold again. Above it all, the Emperor waits, silent, immobile, preparing for the final confrontation. The warp storms flicker against the ship's hull. You imagine Horus deep in his sanctum aboard the Vengeful Spirit, pacing, smiling, already tasting victory. His laugh is distant thunder, his pride a fire that burns galaxies. And yet, told here in quiet rhythm, even his cruelty sounds like an old lullaby. You close your eyes for a moment. The sound of bolters fades into steady rain, the firestorms into candlelight. Terror burns, but you are calm. The story carries you further into the dream. The Vengeful Spirit groans around you as though it knows you are nearing the end of its story. The hum is lower now, like the last notes of a song fading into silence. The corridor opens into a vast hall, walls lined with bronze reliefs of Horus's victories. They glimmer faintly in the red light, each figure carved larger than life, but all of them feel strangely hollow. You step slowly, your breath syncing with the rhythm of distant drums. The common historical fact is this: the final duel between Horus and the Emperor took place not on Terra's soil, but aboard this very ship. After years of war, betrayal, and ruin, it came down to two figures, a father and his most beloved son, locked in a chamber where galaxies seemed to tremble. The odd little detail. Some accounts claim Horus redecorated the chamber before the duel, filling it with trophies and murals of his triumphs. Imagine pausing an apocalyptic war to hang up new wallpaper. Hold on, I need this place to look dramatic. That's joke number one, whispered gently. The scholarly debate rages eternal. Did the Emperor hesitate out of love for Horus? Or was he genuinely overpowered until divine power surged through him? Some texts say the Emperor held back, unable to strike his son fully until the very end. Others insist he fought with all his might and nearly lost. The truth, like the shadows of this corridor, flickers but never settles. You move deeper into the hall. The air feels thicker here, heavy with echoes of violence. You can almost hear the clash, bolts of psychic power colliding, weapons sparking like suns colliding. Yet in this telling, the fury is muted, like thunder muffled by a pillow. The battle becomes rhythm, not roar. You remember another fact: Sanguinius reached this chamber before the Emperor, facing Horus alone. The angel fought bravely, but Horus slew him. His body was left as a silent warning, wings spread across the floor. You step carefully, as though not to disturb feathers that are no longer there. And here is the odd fact that lingers strangely. Later legends say Sanguinius's last look was so pure that even Horus faltered for a heartbeat. Imagine glaring at your brother so hard that he feels guilty in the middle of galactic treason. That's joke number two. The scholars debate endlessly whether Sanguinius's death was necessary to weaken Horus, or whether it was tragedy without purpose. Did his sacrifice truly shift the battle, or was it only symbolic? You drift through the questions as though they were feathers falling, soft and unresolved. You step into the final chamber. The ceiling arches like the sky itself, painted with constellations that no longer exist. Broken glass crunches softly under your boots, and in your imagination, the Emperor and Horus are here, one radiant, one shadowed, both titanic in presence, both bound by grief. The historical fact remains. It was only when Horus turned his fury upon an innocent guardsman that the Emperor struck with full force. Love became resolve. Mercy gave way to necessity. With a final blow of psychic might, the Emperor ended his son's life. Horus fell, and the galaxy's rebellion broke in that instant. But the odd, strange detail whispers too. Some accounts say that in Horus's last moment, he was freed of chaos's grip and looked upon his father with clarity. For the briefest instant, the son returned. Imagine the quiet heartbreak of recognition right before the end. The scholars cannot agree. Was Horus redeemed in that final second, or is that a comforting myth told by later generations? Was there forgiveness or only annihilation? The debate circles endlessly, like a wheel that never stops turning. Your voice drops lower now, soft as the hum of old machinery. You move slowly around the empty chamber, feeling the absence of titans. The air is cold but layered with echoes, shouts, prayers, the cry of a dying angel, the silence of a father striking his son, and into that silence you slip a faint smile. Imagine if the duel had been live-streamed, with Imperial commentators whispering, "And now, folks, the Emperor's winding up for, oh, that's a big one." Joke number 3, whispered gently, so the tragedy doesn't sting too much. You breathe deeply, slow and steady. The chamber is empty now, but the weight of it presses like a heavy blanket. This is where the heresy ended, yet its echoes stretch 10,000 years forward. The Emperor was mortally wounded, carried to the Golden Throne where he sits even now, neither alive nor dead. The Imperium survived, but it was broken, scarred, and locked into endless war. You let your mind drift. Another odd memory from Earth's history rises. Medieval alchemists once believed you could make gold by feeding lead special elixirs. Imagine the Adeptus Mechanicus nodding along, muttering, "Yes, that seems reasonable." The absurdity softens the weight of the moment. Your steps carry you to the edge of the chamber. You place a hand on the wall, cold and still. You listen to the silence, and in that silence the heresy becomes less a war and more a bedtime tale, a tragedy whispered so slowly it turns into a lullaby. The duel fades, the echoes soften, and you are left with the quiet hum of memory. And so you let the story hold you gently, as though you too were resting on the Golden Throne, watching time drift past like clouds. The Vengeful Spirit is quiet now. The corridors no longer hum with engines of war, but with silence, deep and hollow, like the breath of a cathedral after the candles have been snuffed. You step slowly, and the air feels still, as though even the walls are remembering. Ahead, a single viewport shows Terra once more, scarred, burning, yet still intact, still stubbornly alive. The common historical fact is this: after the Emperor struck Horus down, he was mortally wounded. His body was carried by Rogul Dawn and his surviving guards back to Terra, into the hidden chamber beneath the Imperial Palace. There, he was entombed upon the Golden Throne, a machine of unimaginable power that sustains his spirit across 10,000 years. The Emperor is neither living nor dead, but forever watching, forever silent, and the odd little detail. Some accounts say the Golden Throne still requires daily sacrifices, thousands of psychers consumed to keep its fires burning. You picture a weary administrator muttering, "Another 1,000 for the Emperor, don't forget to fill out the attendance sheet." That's joke number 1. Soft as a sigh, the scholars debate endlessly whether the Emperor's survival is truly salvation or simply prolonging his death. Is he guiding humanity, whispering through the Astronomicon, or is the Imperium clinging to a corpse ruled by silence and bureaucracy? Hope or illusion? The arguments stretch across millennia, unresolved. You step deeper into the chamber of memory, and the scene shifts. The heresy is over, but its aftermath spreads like cracks in glass. The loyal legions are shattered. The traitors flee into the warp, their Primarchs ascending into demonhood or vanishing into shadow. The Imperium is left bloodied, broken, yet determined to endure. The fact is clear. Robert Guilliman returned to Terra and began the Reformation. He divided the surviving legions into smaller chapters, writing the Codex Astartes to prevent any single commander from holding too much power again. It was the blueprint for the Imperium's survival. The odd detail? Guilliman supposedly hand-edited draft after draft of the Codex, obsessively changing words until it was perfect. Imagine a Primarch arguing with a proofreader over commas. "No, brother, it's not codexes, it's codices," joke number 2. Whispered with a sleepy smile, and the scholarly debate continues. Did Guilliman's reforms save the Imperium, or did they fracture its strength forever? Some praise his wisdom, others say his bureaucracy stifled flexibility. Was it survival, or was it slow suffocation by rules? Even now the question lingers unanswered. You walk onward, and the ship's walls shimmer faintly with warp light. Echoes of demon laughter seem to fade in the distance, but you keep moving calmly. The traitor legions retreat into the Eye of Terror, their home forever cursed. Mortarion, Fulgrim, Angron, Lorgar, they vanish into demonhood, their humanity discarded. The heresy is over, but its scars never heal. Another odd fact drifts to mind. Some texts suggest that in the chaos after Horus's fall, scavengers looted parts of the Vengeful Spirit, selling trinkets as relics of the War Master. Imagine someone hawking a broken doorknob on a street corner, whispering, "Yes, yes, Horus touched this very handle." Joke number 3. The scholars, of course, argue whether the traitors could ever have been forgiven had they repented. Was damnation inevitable, or could the Emperor have offered mercy? Some believe reconciliation was impossible, that chaos consumes too fully. Others wonder if one word of forgiveness might have altered eternity. No answer comes, only silence where forgiveness might have lived. You pause, pressing your palm against the cold wall. The ship hums faintly beneath your hand, but it is the hum of memory, not engines. The heresy has ended, yet the Imperium lives on in its shadow, chained to the throne, locked in endless war. 10,000 years of lies and truths tangled together. Your voice softens, almost a whisper. Humanity believes the Emperor guides them still, that his will is eternal. Yet some wonder if those whispers are only echoes, if the Astronomicon burns not with his light, but with the desperation of sacrifice. It is both comfort and tragedy, hope and horror, woven together so tightly you cannot separate them. And in that paradox, you find the strange serenity of the Warhammer universe. It is a place where despair and hope are twins, where glory and absurdity hold hands. A galaxy on fire, and yet, somehow, it still rocks you gently towards sleep. You remember another odd fragment of history, not from the far future, but from Earth itself. In the Victorian era, some people believed sleeping with a slice of raw beef on your forehead cured headaches. You chuckle faintly, imagining a space marine tucking steak into his helmet before battle. Even legends need bedtime remedies. You breathe deeply, slowly. The echoes of Horus fade, the Emperor's light dims, the wars stretch endlessly forward. But your telling has grown soft, drowsy, almost like waves on a midnight shore. The heresy has ended, yet its story continues forever. You step one last time through the corridor, and behind you, the doors of the Vengeful Spirit close. The ship is quiet now. Only silence, only memory, only the hum of ancient betrayal that lulls you toward rest. And so you leave the galaxy burning, but your eyes are heavy, your breath steady. 10,000 years of lies have been revealed, and all that remains is a soft whisper across the stars.